Thanks, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. I was just standing in the wings and listening in, and the last few lines that I heard, we are in a country with incredible customers and incredible businesses. And taking a lead from there, we also have an incredible panel this afternoon. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves because they can do maximum justice to their very embellished careers. I'll start with Will.
Hi, I'm Will Mason. I'm the founder of a company called Infact Systems. We are a credit reference agency. We exchange information with lenders and help consumers get access to credit through affordability and credit risk services.
Hi, I'm Ayesha Ofori. I'm the founder and CEO of Propelle, and we're a female-focused investment platform.
Hello, I'm Abby Thomas. I'm the CEO and Chief Ombudsman of the Financial Ombudsman Service, the impartial and free dispute resolution service for UK financial services.
And thank you all for joining us on this panel discussion this afternoon. So if I may start with yourself, Ayesha, I wanted to ask a question around, can you provide examples of innovative approaches FinTechs have taken to deliver fair value for companies and customers?
Sure, and I'll use Propelle as an example of this. So as I mentioned, we are a female-focused investment platform designed to help women invest with confidence and invest more regularly because women tend to save rather than invest anywhere near the levels that they need to. And for us, when we thought about what it was we wanted to put into our platform, it really boiled down to really understanding what the specific hurdles and needs our customers had that weren't already being addressed by the market. And that allowed us to be innovative. I think the irony is some of the features and things that we've built into our platform shouldn't actually have to be innovation. I think they should be standard across the board. But what we found is that oftentimes you focus on what your end product is and not necessarily on whether customers are actually understanding in the way that they need to, that works for them. And also things such as providing additional support. But at Propelle, we stripped it right back to basics. We looked at things from, use of language. We looked at the risk warnings and the various other things that I think can often be sort of taken for granted. But what we found is that these things mattered a lot, particularly for women, and could act as barriers. So whilst we absolutely still needed to have them, we looked at how we could change what was pretty much commonplace to still make sure we're meeting various FCA regulations, but change them in a way that worked better for women. To give you a more specific example, we've built various tools on our platform. One of them is what we call a risk tool, which is to help women better understand what risk is, what risk means to them, what risk means in relation to investments. And what we found is that was particularly important before you even start talking about various different investments. So it's really about trying to understand how you can add value in the journey and the things before you get to the end product, which is where you as a company likely make your money. And as I said, a lot of the features and things that we've built into our platform, I really don't think should be innovation. I think every investment platform should have them. But we found that they haven't, and that's overwhelmingly why women aren't investing already with those platforms out there.
Yeah, thanks, Ayesha. I think that's a really incredible space that you're working in because I think women are that segment that need a bit more support wrapper around financial awareness, financial literacy. And I know that whilst Consumer Duty has one of its pillars around customer understanding and another one around customer support, maybe if Will yourself or Ayesha, you want to talk a bit more about how do you think fair value assessments within business models then translate into actual fair value and better understanding in the hands of the consumer?
Okay, so we're obviously a B2B company. We sell data to lenders. And so for us, the consumer, to a certain extent, is one step removed. So we think about fair value in what is the information that we're providing to the lender to help them make a better decision from an affordability or credit risk perspective about that particular customer. And then from a pricing point of view as well, is making sure that we don't detrimentally impact the price a consumer is going to be offered because of the data the lender is using from our side. And I think there are lenders in the room, obviously, but the way we think about this is in advance of actually selling to a lender, if you can do a traditional kind of retrospective analysis and create the swap set that allows them to think about declines and accepts of the customers that they have in their portfolio already and how we would have helped them change the dynamics of that portfolio, then we end up in a position where ideally the lender is more profitable overall, and the kind of net benefit is that Infact's costs aren't flowed through at all. We price incredibly competitively. Our competitors are obviously the mainstream credit reference agencies, and I think from a technology point of view, the price that they are charging to the lenders is higher than what we do. But they definitely don't take the kind of consumer-facing attitude that we do in terms of how we build products, how we think about products for the end customer that's actually engaging with that brand, because that isn't us ultimately.
Yeah. Wonder, Ayesha, if you want to add anything to that.
I think it's just, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to, as a business, obviously one of the things that you're focused on is profitability and generating revenue, but equally at the same time you do have to provide fair value to the end consumers. And what I think is it's about meeting in the middle, and ultimately if you're not providing fair value, you won't be attracting consumers in the numbers that you need them, and so ultimately you won't be making any money. So I think, and definitely what we do on our side is focus more on, are we pricing competitively? Are our products actually addressing needs? Are we providing the relevant support? Do our customers actually understand? Because I think a lot of times you might build something and think, okay, we understand, this makes sense, but if the consumer doesn't actually understand, then you haven't actually met that need. And again, I think this is something particularly relevant when it comes to women investing. What our research showed is that yes, there are a lot of platforms out there, but actually women didn't have the confidence or didn't feel they understood enough to move forward. But I'm sure all of these platforms were built thinking, actually, this is understandable, it's fine. So it's really important to, I think, focus on that as well.
Yeah. And Abby, of course, I'm going to be really keen on your views in terms of how do you address situations where customers perceive that they're not getting fair value or fair price for the products and services that they consume? And what are you seeing in terms of trends, in terms of that either perception or reality in terms of the hands of the consumers?
Well, first of all, I should mention that the Financial Ombudsman Service effectively works for two sets of customers. So on the one hand, we're of course there for a consumer or a small business that feels that they haven't been treated fairly by a financial services provider. But equally, we are also there for the business customers who are on the other side of that dispute from our perspective. And I think, the topic of fair value and the closely associated topic, as Ayesha has said, of consumer understanding comes up a lot in our work. And I think that the trend is universal and has always been there. Customers want to know, or consumer customers want to know what to expect from a provider. They want to know not just at the point of sale, but through the life cycle of the product, how they can maximize their own value. And I think there's a real opportunity there for a good provider who can explain that in a simple way, tailor it to the market they're seeking to serve. There's a win-win. I think when we've been looking most recently post the Consumer Duty implementation, what we've found is the complaints that are coming to our service haven't really changed. Ultimately, we've always been there to say, if you feel like you haven't been treated in a fair and reasonable basis, you can bring your complaint to us. And that's still very much our position. We've always stressed with our business customers the importance of being very clear and providing that consumer understanding. We've always stressed that if you say you're going to provide an aspect of a service, it is reasonable for the consumer customer to expect that to be provided. So I think the consumer duty is really important, but only in amplifying the trends that have already existed. And consumers themselves are also more knowledgeable with every year that passes as well. And they will go out and they will research not just the product itself, but the sales and service experience they should expect around it. So again, I think it's to everyone's benefit to really think about this early on, like what would be a great customer experience, not just at the point of sale, but through that life cycle, how that product is going to be used, how it meets the objectives of that consumer or small business, how it really serves them.
And thanks for that, Abby. But most of the organization are spending a lot of effort, resource, time, and thought leadership in trying to embed consumer duty into not just fair pricing, product design, but also CX and beyond, as you said, throughout the life cycle of that customer journey. But if you're not seeing that shift in trend, what's probably the reason behind it? Is it hasn't embedded well enough, or are people still doing a bit of a tick box exercise and missing the main point around customer understanding?
Oh, no, I work across the entire financial services sector, and we wouldn't be able to generalize, but I'd say those companies that I see that are really embracing the consumer duty are trying very hard to walk a mile in their customer shoes, thinking from what are the key KPIs that really represent that great customer experience? How do they get as close as they possibly can to the voice of the customer, really understanding how it feels to be a customer of the organisation, which we all know is more challenging than it should be. Those are the companies that I think that are really embracing it and will ultimately, to Ayesha and Will's point, profit from that as well, because that's the way to build an enduring and lasting relationship with your customer, when you understand their needs and you can demonstrate that you can serve them really well.
So that takes me to a great segue into my next question, which is around how do we balance customer experience, customer expectations with the need to make profit? Because it's a fine balance between both. And maybe if I can come to you, Will, first, and then anybody else who wants to give a view.
There's sort of I'm in two minds on how to answer the question, because there's almost no point in building a company and doing what everyone in this room does if you can't build something that's profitable and is then there to serve consumers in the future. It's how you build towards that profitability and how you do it in the context of what the customer actually wants out of the relationship that they're setting up with you. And I think, to your point on improvement in education, I think the FinTechs of today have done a great job in educating consumers about financial services. That's not to say that traditional organizations haven't as well. I think they've probably just, to a certain extent, followed what some of the FinTechs have done in enabling that access to education. And you now look at some of those FinTechs, and they are enormous organizations who've done an incredible job educating consumers, making products and services available to them that they want to use and that provide them with enduring value. And they are now enduring businesses that will be around for a very, very long time. So I don't think there should be a payoff between great customer service and the profitability of an organization. I do think there's a piece in this in technology and how you handle the relationship between technology and then manual intervention as required with consumers. And from the sort of pillar box of being a B2B organization, we have very few relationships directly with consumers. So it's easier said than done for us, I understand that. But great technology can enable great experiences for customers, and then having that handoff into where you need a manual intervention, you need a customer support service person to get in touch with them and handle something very specific. That interaction, that trade-off is a really important one to manage.
Yeah. And through whatever you've seen, either in your own business or outside, can you give me an example of a good tech approach that someone's adopted to solve for that?
I'm not sure that Flora spoke about it, but I think Klarna have just saved $40 million a year by automating some of the more straightforward interactions that they have with consumer in terms of that customer support operation, and then immediately escalating the more complex ones to agents. So it's a huge opportunity.
Good. Ayesha, anything you want to add, both from a technology side as well as, talking about customer understanding, and you do talk a lot about supporting women and in some unconscious bias that exists, which sometimes technology can't solve for.
Yeah, I think just echoing what Will says, first of all, about the point to do with sort of value and profitability. for me, they're completely linked. If you provide fantastic value to your customers, they will come, and that will allow you to be profitable. But you do have to factor in things like scale, and that's where technology comes in. I think with the advancements that we're having with technology, particularly with regards to AI, there's going to be a lot that fintechs will be able to utilize to provide additional support, to provide additional understanding that I think in the past you might have to have had, for example, humans doing that, and so it makes it sort of cost ineffective. So I think there's going to be a lot more that we'll start to see happen in those areas that will help to provide better support and understanding for consumers while still enabling companies to keep their margins down.
Yeah. Abby, do you have a backup view or a build on that?
No, just to say that the Financial Ombudsman Service too, I think it's very important that we take advantage of all the technology we have available to us, because we are dealing not only with the more established and sort of bigger players, but also with a whole range of financial services providers. For me, it's very important that we too can look at our own operations and say, well, are we using machine learning, which we are in fact, to help us label cases, to help us route them to the caseworker in a more efficient way, to help us provide additional support to consumers when they come to our website. Mm-hmm. We've found that to be really valuable to us, and we welcome it when we see it from other parties as well, again in the spirit of providing that additional support, providing that additional help to a consumer who might need it. I think there's opportunity there. I think, of course, with any new technology, there's always a small element of risk too. We need to make sure that that really does work for all customers. Not every consumer customer might benefit from that. There needs to be other channels too. But overall, I'm really excited by the potential of digital transformation in the sector, but also in our own operations.
Yeah, and it's good to know that you're doing it to yourself rather than just kind of enforcing it on others, because that's quite encouraging, and use of technology is so powerful, and we've only heard about it in the last 48 hours and reinforced that. I've also heard a lot about the customer being in the center, and that's what we heard even Janine and Lou speak about very passionately, about how customer is in the center of all the decision making and the thinking. But true to the topic of the panel today, how often is the customer right? And is there a false view on that?
Well, I mean, again, we have two customers, so one of them is always going to be successful in a dispute. Look, we find more often in favour of business customers. We find slightly less often in favour of consumer customers who come to us. Again, I think that's a really important point. There's an understanding point there. Why are consumer customers bringing their cases to us when we ultimately do not find in their favour? What are they missing? What hasn't been explained to them that would give them that confidence that they have been well served? I think there's a real opportunity there for businesses to seize. But our mission, I think, is to make sure that absolutely everyone who comes to the Financial Ombudsman Service or interacts with us, again, it could be a consumer or a small business who's raised the complaint, but it could be the respondent business on the other side, feels that they're getting a better outcome or they're better informed after they've worked with the Financial Ombudsman Service. So for me, it's about saying every single case that we look at, what is the insight there? What is the value? How can we share that with the financial services ecosystem so that everyone can improve?
Yeah, and hopefully, with consumer duty embedding more strongly into and maturing and evolving in the organizations, we will see better outcomes in terms of not just what the consumers are served, but also how much of that then gets escalated to FOS and the level of propensity for customers to complain, because you've solved some of that in the root cause in terms of better customer understanding and customer support, which is exactly what, Ayesha, you were referring to, where most often that gap is in terms of customer understanding what's the true value of what they're receiving.
And I'd actually say that, if customers are complaining about something and it's because they haven't understood, then it's the business that has failed. The business has failed to produce their product or service in a way that has enabled the customer to understand. So I'd actually still say, even though you may favour the business in that sense, I still think the customer is right, because although they don't understand, if one of the key sorts of principles is to make sure that things are fair, clear, and the customers understand them. If something has been missed, then that's on the business.
I personally agree with that view as well, and that's what we strive to do in our day jobs, to try and make it simpler, easier, better, more accessible and fairer for our customers. Which takes me to my last question. I think we're running out of time and the clock's ticking in front of me, is what have you in your individual capacities or have done or doing to make financial services more accessible and transparent in the hands of the ultimate user? So anything that you want to start off with?
Yeah, okay. So we exchange information in real time to help protect consumers and protect lenders to a certain extent. We think that real-time information sharing can drive the sort of single biggest kicker in financial inclusion since credit cards were started, both in how you protect consumers from taking on too much debt in too short a space of time, but also building your credit profile faster. It's basically all we do. So that is what we focus on.
And you're using a lot of technology to help you support that?
We are all in-house built technology. We're just a technology company. Data and technology, but yeah, it's all technology.
Fabulous. Good luck.
And with Propelle, our focus on making things accessible comes from several areas. So first of all, it's about, as I've mentioned before, understanding, building tools and creating services to help women really engage and better understand with the underlying financial investment products that we offer. And I'd say that it's also about providing access to those ultimate investments that actually move the needle and can help women build wealth. So for example, one of the things that we're looking at is, as well as having traditional financial investment offerings such as ISAs and general investment accounts where women can invest in ETFs and mutual funds and things like this, we're also looking at alternative investments. So things like fractionalized real estate and access to other alternative investment asset classes, because fundamentally, our view is that's actually how you build wealth, by having a diversified portfolio that also includes things beyond traditional investments, which isn't typically what you see on most investment platforms. However, our view is that is actually how you democratize wealth, by providing that access to those types of investments to retail customers as well, not just the wealthy.
Any closing comments from you?
So for us, Ayesha, you used the phrase democratize wealth, which I love. That sounds fantastic. For me, it's about democratizing insight. That's what I would really like. I would really like any consumer in the UK, or again, any small business who might want to raise a complaint, to feel like they can come to the Financial Ombudsman Service and understand what good really looks like, because our website is super easy and accessible to use. Our insight is displayed in a way that's really compelling, that makes sense to people, that's tailored for our audiences, and that we're reaching out proactively not only to that section of our customer base, but to the business section of our customer base as well. Sharing what we've found, sharing our thoughts, sharing what we think is coming up. That's our mission at the moment, I think, to bring to life that better informed part of our strategy and vision for the next 3 years.
All three panelists give me a lot of hope, and makes everything that we're doing for consumers and consumer duty to embed well absolutely worthwhile. Wish Infact Systems and Propelle the very best in their future endeavors, and thank you very much, Abby, for sharing the industry body's view on consumer duty, customers, and with that, can I request the audience to give the panel a round of applause? Thank you. Thank you.